Good evening. My name's Lorna, as you know, and I'm here to talk to you about the Pemba Channel Conservation Area, also known as PECA, and I'll be calling it PECA through the slide so you know what I'm talking about, a project that we've been working with FFI for the last 3 years. I'm a director of a small NGO called Mwambao Coastal Community Network, sorry about the mouthful, and we were established 8 years ago. Ali Thani there on the left, second left, co-founded the organization with me. And our vision or our mission is to work with coastal communities and to promote their role in local management. I'm trained as an ecologist. I grew up in Kenya, and I've been working on conservation in and out of East Africa for the last 25 years. This is our team. There's one key member that's missing there. That's Harib on the left, Ali Thani, Ali Juma, Dani, who's an intern, Fatima, myself, Hamida, and Ali Abdurrahim. Pemba Island lies on the east coast of Tanzania. It's the northernmost island of Zanzibar. It's a special island because it's an oceanic island, which means that it was never joined to the mainland. And it's separated from the mainland by a very deep channel of about 1,000 meters deep, which means that there's a strong coastal current which passes between it and the mainland, and there's lots of upwelling of nutrients, and there's a very rich fauna in that area. The PECA, or the Pemba Channel Conservation Area, is shown by the blue line in the middle there, and embraces the whole western coast of Pemba. Not unlike Scotland that we're going to hear about. The west coast is perhaps more interesting than the east coast. It's very heavily indented. Unlike Scotland, perhaps, we have a lot of mangroves, coral reefs, seagrass beds, sandbanks, and so on. The area at the bottom there in orange is the area that we've been working in. The area is important. There's very high diversity in coral species and fish species as well. And we have 9 species of whales and dolphins, which is pretty unique for that area. I just want to talk about conservation and people. I know that's the theme of this evening, but I just want to sort of reiterate it because in the Zanzibar perspective, in the Pemba Channel perspective, 85% of people living on the coast of Pemba are reliant on their marine resources. Every day they do something to do with the ocean. I think we often perceive that people don't actually know the state of their resources, but actually they're very well aware of the state of their resources. We often perceive also as conservationists that people are the problem, and indeed we are often the problem. However, when you're dealing with a situation where people are so dependent on the ocean, you have to involve them in decision making. And you have to empower them to be able to take local management initiatives into their own hands. And this really forms the basis of our work. A little bit about life in Pemba. This is an area view, typical area view. Fishermen will fish using small canoes and sailing boats. They'll use traps like this. They'll use nets of all sorts. They'll use spears, spear guns, lines. Women do a lot of seaweed farming. This is important because it brings them an income. It's an export crop. On the left of the channel there, you can see some lines of down here. That's all seaweed farming. Women and children also collect at low tide shellfish, octopus, squid, sea cucumbers, really anything that they can find. And what's interesting is that people's lives are very much connected with the moon, the lunar cycle. Every lunar cycle we have 2 periods of high tide, spring tides, when the tide is extreme. And this means that this is when people can access their resources. And in between those times, when people spend time at home, tending their crops, doing household chores, and so on. Dwindling resources in a lifetime. This is Hamisi, who's one of our community recorders. He's measuring an octopus there that probably weighs about 500 grams. I just want to read a quote from an elder that I was interviewing recently. he said, I asked him about the changes he'd seen in his lifetime. He said, octopus could be found up to 15 kilograms. One octopus could feed 10 people. I once found an octopus so big that 2 of us could not pull it out of its den. These days, you're lucky if you find octopus of 1 or even 1.5 kilograms. Sea cucumbers are not seen anymore. Milkfish are scarce, butterfly fish and lobster have all diminished. So what has changed to bring this about? When you think about it, in our lifetimes, the last 50 years, almost everything has changed. Methods of fishing has changed, gears have changed, boats have changed, the number of fishers have changed. And there are other demands too. There's tourism who are demanding tourists come and they expect to eat seafood every day of their holiday, and not just one fish. They want an array of lobster and everything else. And also there's a demand for export as well. Octopus is exported from Pemba. And reef fish too have been particularly affected by overfishing. So yes, there are threats to biodiversity. Another elder told me, people have become greedy. There is much destructive fishing, and particular use of small nets. Drag nets have destroyed seagrass and corals, and there is seawater rise because of mangrove cutting. Turtles used to nest on Quarter Island, but not anymore. So, PECA covers 1,100 square kilometres. Their resources, they have 4 rangers, 1 patrol boat, and 2 other members of staff. It's very difficult to address sustainable management over that area with those resources. So us as a project with FFI are taking very much a local approach, working village by village, identifying and mapping their local resources, building their capacity and accountability with a Fisher Committee. This is Ali Thani here. He's an excellent community facilitator, and he really gets people going, and they're really inspiring. And we help them to make bylaws to manage their area and to enforce those bylaws. This is a fishing committee on Kisiwa Panza. I want to talk a little bit about Octopus. Octopus is very special and gives us a really amazing opportunity to work with local management. Octopus, apart from being an export crop and having a monetary value, it grows very, very quickly. So it can double its size. Sorry, this is in Swahili, but I'm sure you can work it out. Miezi means months at the top there. It can double its size in 6 to 8 weeks, and this means that if you manage to manage an area for octopus and close it for fishing, it means you can get really high benefits in a short period of time. Females have to be about 1 kilo or more to be mature to lay their eggs, and they lay their eggs on dens deep in the reef, and they aerate their eggs for a period of a month, after which they die. And the male dies too after mating only once. Not many people know that. So we've been working with communities to introduce what we're calling octopus banks. And they've been working really well. These are areas, as Nicola showed in a previous slide, that 2 communities have set aside for 3 months at a time to close for octopus fishing. And so you can go from an average of an octopus of 500 grams before a closure to octopus of 3 to 5 kilos after a closure, or even one as big as this, which is about 7 or 8 kilos. This guy, he was very pleased with himself when we gave him a prize. So many communities fish octopus, and so it's a fantastic entry point for us, because it means that we can do something with communities quite quickly, and they can see the benefit from their work. It inspires belief in them, in themselves as well, to be able to do this. And I think that's part of the problem. People see the problem, but they don't know what to do about it. So we're capacitating them to be able to do that. We work in one village called Kuku, and they're really our star community. They set up this, the green area here is an octopus closure, and the idea was that every year they might close it for 3 months. Well, these guys decided that they would close it for 3 months, they would open it only for 3 days, and then they would close it again. And they've been doing that for 3 years now, which is fantastic. But they've gone beyond that. The red area there, they decided then that they would set up a permanent closure, which would be for fish breeding, and they kept that permanently closed. And then beyond that, they decided that when they opened their area, they would split the proceeds so that people would see a benefit. So they split the proceeds 3 ways, one for the community, which might be for something like a school or school doors or something like that, a third for the committee to cover the cost of patrol, and a third for the fishers who actually go out and fish on that day. So they've been really amazing. And this area here in the red line shows the limit of their fishing ground, and they're enforcing their bylaws within that area. This is a picture of the committee. Sorry that people don't often smile when they have their pictures taken, but this is their management plan, and this is setting up the protocol on opening day. So what next? We're working at the moment in 3 communities, and we hope over the next couple of years we'll expand that to 6 to 8 communities, which would bring about 10,000 hectares of peka into sustainable management. What happened there? But meanwhile, we also recognise that people can't do this all by themselves. They need to be recognised by the authorities. They need to be supported by the authorities. So we also work with the Department of Fisheries and the peka managers to support and acknowledge what communities are doing. But we also work with other players as well, which is really important. We work with the octopus buyers, the fish buyers, to make sure that people get a fair price for what they're doing. You know, if they're putting themselves out there and stopping fishing in an area, then they really need to be acknowledged for what they're doing. And this is a workshop where we have buyers and government and community members together to talk about that and to fix a price before opening. Well, thank you very much. I think that Mwambao and FFI working together has been a really fruitful partnership. Us being on the ground, I think we can bring the networks, we can bring the local knowledge. FFI with their more global experience really feed into that partnership really well as well. And while I feel, by no means are we addressing all the problems that are facing people in peka and their livelihoods, I do think that it's a very big step in the right direction. Thank you very much.